I'm your host, Emily. With us tonight we have Dr. Ives, a self-proclaimed expert on W.H. Auden poetry. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Ives.
Thank you for having me, Emily. It's a pleasure to be here. You know, when you asked me to come speak about Auden poetry, I really struggled to figure out what part of his poetry I would focus on, or if there was a specific poem. And when you asked me to narrow it down to just one poem, well, that was an entirely different ballgame, and I decided not to. I'm going to talk to you all about the Hooray Canonicae, which was a series of 7 poems, actually. The Hooray Canonicae was written over a period of 5 years, from about 1949 to 1954. As I mentioned earlier, it's a series of poems, and each one of the 7 sections represents one of the monastic hours of prayer, which range from 6 a.m. to 3 a.m. at 3-hour intervals. So you have the prime, the terce, the sext, nones, vespers, compline, and lauds. And just like each one represents a specific hour of time, each one also represents a specific idea or element. So you have birth and creation, going forth into the city, elements of the city, work in the city, visions of the restored city. Auden really focused on the city a lot, you'll notice. Death and last judgment, and then he closes with the benediction. What's interesting is that the poems focus on the scene of Christ's crucifixion on Good Friday. The speaker, who seems to begin the first poem almost just going through the motions of his day-to-day life, gradually becomes more aware of the gravity of Christ's sacrifice, and that becomes sort of an ever-growing haunting element throughout the work.
That is so interesting, Dr. Ives. If it isn't too much to ask, would you be willing to read a section of the poem? I'm sure the audience would love it.
Woo! Well, if you really think we have time, let's see what to read to you all. I think I'm going to read you my personal favorite section, section 3, the sext, and it's divided into 3 parts. You need not see what someone is doing to know if it is his vocation. You have only to watch his eyes. A cook mixing a sauce, a surgeon making a primary incision, a clerk completing a bill of lading. They wear the same rapt expression, forgetting themselves in a function. How beautiful it is, that eye on the object look, to ignore the appetitive goddesses, to desert the formidable shrines of Re, Aphrodite, Demeter, Diana, to pray instead to Saint Focus, Saint Barbara, San Saturnino, or whoever one's patron is, that one may be worthy of their mystery. What a prodigious step to have taken. There should be monuments. There should be odes to the nameless heroes who took it first, to the first flaker of flints who forgot his dinner, the first collector of seashells to remain celibate. Where should we be but for them? Feral still, unhouse-trained, still wandering through forests without a consonant to our names. Slaves of Dane kind, lacking all notion of a city, and at this noon, for this death, there would be no agents. You need not hear what orders he is giving to know if someone has authority. You have only to watch his mouth. When a besieging general sees a city wall breached by his troops, when a bacteriologist realizes in a flash what was wrong with his hypothesis, when, from a glance at the jury, the prosecutor knows the defendant will hang. Their lips and the lines around them relax, assuming an expression not of simple pleasure at getting their own sweet way, but of satisfaction at being right, an incarnation of fortitudo justitia nu. You may not like them much, who does? But we owe them basilicas, divas, dictionaries, pastoral verse, the courtesies of the city. Without these judicial mouths, which belong for the most part to very great scoundrels, how squalid existence would be, tethered for life to some hut village, afraid of the local snake, or the local ford demon, speaking the local patois of some 300 words. Think of the family squabbles and the poison pens. Think of the inbreeding. And, at this noon, there would be no authority to command this death. Anywhere you like, somewhere on broad-chested, life-giving earth, anywhere between her thirstlands and undrinkable ocean, the crowd stands perfectly still. Its eyes, which seem one, and its mouths, which seem infinitely many, expressionless, perfectly blank. The crowd does not see what everyone sees, a boxing match, a train wreck, a battleship being launched, does not wonder, as everyone wonders, who will win, what flag she will fly, how many will be burned alive, is never distracted, as everyone is always distracted by a barking dog, a smell of fish, a mosquito on a bald head. The crowd sees only one thing, which only the crowd can see, an epiphany of that which does whatever is done. Whatever God a person believes in whatever way he believes, no two are exactly alike. As one of the crowd, he believes and only believes in that in which there is only one way of believing. Few people accept each other, and most will never do anything properly. But the crowd rejects no one. Joining the crowd is the only thing all men can do. Only because of that can we say all men are brothers, superior because of that to the social exoskeletons. When have they ever ignored their queens, for 1 second stopped work on their provincial cities to worship the prince of this world like us, at this noon, on this hill, in the occasion of this dying?
Wow, simply stunning. But Dr. Ives, what does it mean? I'm having a little trouble following.
Oh, and don't worry about it, Emily. I know when I did my first read through, I really had trouble discerning any meaning from this series of poems. So Sext, the poem I just read to you all, and the third in this collection, was, as you heard, divided into 3 different sections. And the first section is expressing admiration of the people in the world who work. So your carpenters, your farmers, your surgeons. And it's explaining that without them, humanity would still be living, to quote Auden, as feral still, unhouse-trained, still wandering through forests without a consonant to our names. And basically without this working class, we wouldn't be nearly as developed of a society as we are. We would just, be running around hunting and kind of, we wouldn't have our nice houses. It would just be very underdeveloped. And then the second section is admiring those among us who possess power or authority, such as military leaders, judges, and these people who have the power to give orders and see those orders followed. And while we don't always like them and we often fear them, we recognize that they're necessary to our lives, because without them and the decisions they've made, we would be lacking things like art and beauty, still fearful of superstitions and largely unable to govern ourselves. And it's important to note that Auden focuses on them because those 2 groups were largely responsible or representative of the people who were responsible for Christ being on the cross. And then the third section is focusing on specifically the crowd that was gathered for Christ's crucifixion. Auden remarks at how joining a crowd is natural human tendency, as is going along with what the crowd decides. And it's very interesting because he focuses a lot on how being a part of that crowd and joining the crowd is kind of the only thing that we're all truly equal in. And by extension, that would make all the members of the crowd equally responsible for not preventing Christ's crucifixion when they were given the choice. The crowd is also blind to what's happening around it. Specifically in the case of Good Friday, the crowd was blind to the true significance of Christ and his true purpose. In referencing their worship of this prince of this world like us, that's implying that they're following the devil, essentially.
Fascinating. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you for joining us here in the English Corner. This is Emily signing off, and be sure to join us next week for our 3-hour special on Proust. Have a great night, folks!